One, it really matters. It really, really matters that Tim Walz has no idea how to load his shotgun. It really matters that Democrats have no idea how to speak to men. It all matters today with the host of Fearless, Tomi Lahren, here on The Will Cain Show. 2, Christopher Columbus, hero or villain today on Columbus Day. Plus, lessons from a Green Beret, including, let's just start with, what is a Green Beret? With Congressman Mike Waltz. And 3, in Batman, they said when they built a prison with a hole in the top that there's no true despair without hope. The escape at the top representing hope. Well, I have no hope, only despair when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page, always on demand by subscribing on Apple or Spotify. If you're listening on terrestrial radio in more than a dozen markets across the country, just go to Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe to the Will Cain Show. Join us every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time right here at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe on YouTube and join the Willisha. I have no hope. I have only despair. It doesn't matter if they're 3-3. It doesn't matter if they're 3 straight seasons of 12-5. I have only despair when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. But I have hope. I have expectation. Dangerous, dangerous expectation when it comes to the Texas Longhorns. Fresh off an amazing victory in the Red River rivalry, we're now ready for the week of Georgia, Texas. A little bit of that later coming up here today on the Will Cain Show. But I have video, I have sound, I have evidence that I think really, really matters about the way that a man can handle a debate. I'll give you J.D. Vance and ABC's Martha Raddatz. And how a man handles a shotgun. I give you Governor, would-be Vice President Tim Walz. Let's get into all of that with story number 1. She is the host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless at Outkick.com. She joins us often here on the Will Cain Show. And when invited, I jump over on to Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Here with us now is Tomi Lahren. What's up, Tomi?
It's great to talk to you. Now, listen, you have despair because of the Dallas Cowboys. I have a teeny tiny little bit of despair because of the Mets yesterday. But you know what? Coming back today, we're going to beat the crap out of the Dodgers, and I, for one, am very excited to watch that. So you see, Will, I do care about sports. We just don't care about the same sports, but I do have passion for sports, and I figured that you would enjoy that.
Oh, you married a baseball guy. Will you wear a jersey? Will you support the Mets? You're a woman, so you're probably going to give yourself a hall pass. But if I run out there in a Longhorns jersey, this is a well-worn debate between me and Tomi. I'll become beta. But you become more alpha when you throw on the Mets jersey?
Yeah, for women, there really are no rules to wearing jerseys, right? So I would happily don a Mets jersey. I actually would have worn one today, but I didn't know if we would get sued if I had Mets paraphernalia on. I didn't know if that would be acceptable because of the trademark stuff and all that, but I would have worn my Mets gear with you here today had I, been confident that we wouldn't have an issue with that.
I don't think your issue was trademark. You're welcome to wear a jersey, I'm pretty sure. Not just on any digital show, but on any television show. Your problem today is coming off a 9-0 loss to the Los Angeles Dodgers. That would have been the harder pill for you to swallow in Game 1 of the National League Championship Series. Game 1 of the ALCS. Yankees and Guardians, I believe, is tonight. We kick off that series this week. But I want to kick this off, Tomi. There's one of those moments in politics where it's easy to make the cheap point, and the cheap point is valid. But I actually think, as I have teased through today at the Will Cain Show, it's really, really important as well. As we watch together, you, me, the Willisha, this video of Governor Tim Walz on a pheasant hunt. He has reporters around him, and I believe it's a reporter from CBS that's asking him a bit about his gun. He describes the gun, but in the entirety of this 20-second clip, he really has trouble loading his shotgun. He's fumbling with what is, by the way, Beretta A400, a very nice gun. Here is Governor Tim Walz.
Governor, what kind of gun is it? This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
Now, there you go. It goes on, by the way. You can see him fumble with that gun a little bit longer. But I have a lot, Tommy. I know a lot about shotguns. I've done a lot of hunting, bird hunting that involves shotgun. I know about that gun. And I'm going to share that with you, but I want to see what you thought of that moment with Tim Walz.
Well, I think it also reeks of desperation that they had to bring media out to watch him pheasant hunt. I mean, that's how desperate they are for male voters. They have to cosplay hunting masculinity in order to hopefully lure in male voters. But what I find most insulting about this, not just as someone who's from South Dakota, really the pheasant hunting capital of the world, I believe, what really bothers me about this is that the Democrats, the left, the liberal media, they spend pretty much every day of the year going after men, going after masculinity, downplaying all things that are masculine. You know, Bud Light going out of their way to demonize what it is to be a manly man. Now they're making up for that. But then the Democrat Party, because they're hurting with male voters in the last 20-something days before an election, now they're drinking beer on late night shows. They're going out pheasant hunting, like I said, cosplaying as masculine men or what masculine men are supposed to look like in their eyes, really the caricature of what they think that is. And it's just insulting. I mean, everything about this campaign is so disingenuous. It's so inauthentic. And I think it's just really reading to me as desperation.
So I'm going to follow you down the rabbit hole of politics for just a moment. But again, I'm going to tell you why I think this is so important. But to your point, Tommy, I believe the latest polling shows Donald Trump leading Kamala Harris something like 53-42 among male voters. And that has crossed across ethnicities. That is Latino men, that's black men, not all with the same numbers, but he is performing very well with men. The Harris-Waltz campaign knows this. They know there's trouble with men. And to your point, they're trying to play to men. Here, Tommy, by the way, is another example. Now, you probably know better details about this than I do, Tommy, but this was an ad put together by this campaign. From what I understand, all the men in this video, as it turns out, are actors. Okay, that's a substantive point in and of itself. But I think more importantly is the role they decided to play here in describing men for Harris and Waltz. Watch.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
There you go, Tommy. It goes on from there. By the way, for anybody listening on radio or podcast, these actors, in and of themselves, whoever was in charge of casting, it's pure comedy. Like, I mean, there's an overweight guy in a too small cowboy hat looking like, I don't know what he's doing, feeding the chickens. I don't know what he's doing. He's got black jeans on, you know, way too tight around the boot. He got some old man, by the way, without all his teeth. Like, they literally put out a casting call for, like, not a full set of teeth. They've got, I don't know, all these guys they've chosen to lean into with barrel-proof bourbon and rare steaks and eating carburetors, Tommy. This is their appeal to men.
Yeah, I thought this was a skit, honestly, when I first saw it. I thought this was something that the Babylon Bee would put out, making fun of the Harris-Waltz campaign and their attempt to attract male voters. And then when you realize they actually put this out there and they're proud of it, I think, again, to my original point, it makes the desperation even easier to detect here. But again, this is what they think of men. Like, they think, not that men care about taking care of their families, being able to afford groceries and mortgage payments, making sure sure that their family members are safe when they walk city streets and that they're safe from the migrant crime. That's what men actually care about. And yes, they might drink bourbon and they might watch sports, but that's what motivates men to go out and vote. But they think what motivates men to go out and vote is that if you play to really what the stereotypes of what they think men are. Oh, well, if you drink beer and if you go to the gym, that's what they think is going to do the trick. And they're completely ignoring all the things that men actually care about and why they would vote for Donald Trump. It's not just because Donald Trump is masculine. It's because Donald Trump wants to return this country to a place where men and fathers and leaders of household can actually function and take care of their families. But that's completely lost on them. And I think it just goes to show how little they actually know about the American electorate.
Do you think by inverse, Tommy, that Donald Trump has a problem with women? And it would be hard. I don't even think it's a fair or accurate question to ask as a generality, women. We know that the demographic that Donald Trump has the most difficulty is single women. But, you know, I don't think it's a full story if we sit here and say, Harris Waltz, so much trouble with men, if we don't also point out, well, just like with Gen Z, you know, young men really getting increasingly conservative, young women getting increasingly liberal. If we don't look at the other side and say, is there not a problem with women for Donald Trump?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I would have told you that that was a big vulnerability and a weak spot, really just for the abortion issue alone. I don't think a lot of women, unless you're a green hair, you know, armpitted hair liberal, I don't think that other issues about Donald Trump really rub you the wrong way. I think if you're an on-the-fence independent female voter, a suburban voter, a mom, or even a single woman, I think the one thing that might have deterred them was the abortion issue. And for some, that's still going to be the case. But I thought J.D. Vance neutralized that in such an effective way during that VP debate, actually acknowledging that this is a frustrating area for many voters, especially female voters, talking about how the Republican Party has to get better on messaging on this issue. I think he neutralized a lot of that concern that a lot of those women had that were on the fence because of the abortion issue. You and I have talked about that a lot. So I think that if they just keep reiterating that message that he laid out perfectly in that debate, I think they're going to do okay, because women are, you know, more concerned about other things, namely crime and the economy, maybe more so than the abortion issue, if they reiterate on the Republican side that they don't want a national abortion ban. That's the key to that one.
I think you're right. I mean, setting aside whatever you feel principally, morally, or religiously, I just think as a pure analysis of elections, I 100% agree with you, Tommy. Now, I want to return to Tim Walz for a moment, why I think this is really, really important. And forgive me, Tommy, if I monologue for just a minute. So, you know, okay, first of all, let's talk about the gun that Tim Walz is using on a pheasant hunt. He's using a Beretta A400. It's a really good gun. Most of my buddies debate, hey, should I get a Beretta A400 or a Super Black Eagle to go duck hunting? But what you're hunting is kind of important. So this is a heavier gun. So you walk in the field like doing pheasants or quail. It's probably not the gun of choice. Fine, not that big of a deal. But in this video, Tim Walz says, I bought this gun when I was shooting a lot of trap, right? Now, trap is, sporting clays, skeet. You shoot a lot, meaning you go out for a round, you do this, you're firing that gun, you're reloading that gun, you're using that gun a lot. And he doesn't seem to, at the very, very least, have good muscle memory or repetition, knowing how to load the gun. And one could argue he's totally ignorant of how to do it. This is an automatic shotgun. Now, everybody who wants to say, well, there's no such, yes, you're right. It's a semi-automatic shotgun. Almost everyone I know colloquially says it's auto. That's just a word that is used. What that means is you pull the trigger and it shoots. And it shoots like 3 to 4 shells, whatever you have loaded up. As opposed to a pump gun or something like that, you can't load them all through the chamber, through the chute. You have to drop one into the chamber, release the bolt, and then put the rest into the sleeve. I'm using a bunch of different words to describe, the mount under the gun that holds the shells. He's trying to load them all. It looks to me like he's trying to load them all through the bottom, and he can't figure out how to get it going, and there's a button you push to release the bolt, and he's just fumbling around with it, and he doesn't know. Here's why I think it's important, okay? It's important because he says in this video, I bought this gun when I was shooting a lot of trap. To your point, he's also playing the role of like a manly man. He's got fresh, starched, never used before, like hunter orange and hunter clothes on. And the point is twofold for me. One, it's all a fraud. It's just such fakeness. And you said, well, Tom, you called it cosplay. And if this is cosplay, by the way, a guy running for president or vice president takes a day off and goes pheasant hunting and happens to invite a bunch of reporters, you think that's a real hunt, or do you think it's cosplay for the media? It's cosplay for the media. And so they're putting on a play. You need to know that as the viewer. They're putting on a play for you, like that ad. They're playing roles. They've cast themselves, and it's fake. And if this is fake, I think everyone listening and watching should be asking, what else is fake? Is Kamala's accent fake? Is Tim Walz's positions on what he did in Minnesota versus what he's saying now fake? Is Tim Walz's record fake? Is his war record fake? Is his DWI fake? Is Kamala's positioning to the center fake? And I think that once you go down that path, you'll start finding some real truth. Finally, Tommy, the second reason I think it's important, this is someone who purports to regulate an industry with knowledge, guns. I don't think you should be able to do so if you are so ignorant. Like, if you don't know this much while pretending that you do, I don't think you should run on a platform and tell everybody that you should be in charge of everyone else's freedom. Gun owners know more about guns than anybody that wants to regulate guns. And that in and of itself should say something, not just about that issue, but maybe all politics, Tommy.
Yeah, everything about this campaign is inauthentic. And it's also Kamala saying that she has a Glock. And I don't believe that for a second. I think that she's trying to appeal to, I don't know, maybe the male voters that are going to think she's a badass if she says she has a Glock. I wish she was pressed on that a little bit more, by the way, because I think you'd see something very similar to what you saw in that Tim Walz cosplay. I mean, he's quite frankly, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he tries to convince us time and time again that he's this Midwest guy and he grew up in a small town. He excused away his lie about Tiananmen Square by saying that he rode bikes as a child in a town of 400. I mean, it makes no sense. The same thing Kamala saying she grew up in a middle-class family. I mean, everything about these people is fake. And then on the other side of that, you have Donald Trump, who is 100% always himself in every setting. One of the things I love about Donald Trump is that he doesn't pretend to be like this middle-class guy. He doesn't go to the Iowa State Fair and chew on a turkey leg and wear jeans with a flannel shirt. He doesn't attempt to do that because he knows that that is not his aesthetic and he knows that that is not him. And he doesn't try to make that him. Like he's either going to be wearing golf attire or he's going to be wearing his suit. That's Donald Trump. And you might not like him, but he's always himself, and sometimes to a fault maybe. But I think people, and especially young people, as much as it seems like young people skew left, I think when they look at these actors on the Democrat side, if they look at Donald Trump, at least they can say, I know what I'm going to get with this guy because at least he tells me how it is, and he doesn't try to fool me into thinking he's something that he's not. But everything about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is fake, it's phony, it's stiff, it's chaotic, it's messy. They can't decide who they are, so why should anybody vote for somebody who doesn't even know who they are? To me, that's going to be the defining moment in this election coming up in a couple weeks.
I totally agree. And it seems to be playing out, Tommy. This is pretty fascinating. So this is from CNN. Apparently, and I didn't see this, but like, what is it, among likely voters or self-identified voters, for the first time since 1984, more people identify as Republican than Democrat. +1 R is where we sit today. First time since 84. And it's hard to overstate how big a shift that is. Here, I want you to listen to this explained on CNN.
All right, so party ID nationally. You go to October, November of 2016, Democrats had a 3-point advantage. You go 4 years ago, Democrats had a 6-point advantage. Look at where we are today, Manu. Republicans with a 1-point advantage. A very different picture, very much mirroring what we see in the party registration numbers in those key battleground states, and Pennsylvania in particular.
That shows some victories for Republicans, by the way, on signing up registered voters. But it also reflects battleground polling on Real Clear Politics. You saw it was a 5-point difference if you go from 2020 to 2024. 2020, D +6, or it's actually a 7-point swing. In 2024, R +1. And if you look at all of the battleground polling on Real Clear Politics right now, every single one of them, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, even if Kamala is leading in one, I think the only one she's leading in right now is Wisconsin, it's 5 points less than what Biden would have led in 2020. Like it seems to be a big 5 to 7 point shift to Trump.
Yeah, well, also shout out to Scott Pressler and others who are getting out there and doing the hard work on the ground, registering every single voter he comes across. I mean, that's the kind of work it's going to take, not just to win in November, but to win future elections. Republicans have to get out there and they have to get scrappy, and so many are unwilling to do so. So big shout out to those on the ground who are actually running that ground game operation, because they're doing an amazing job. The RNC seems to be finally getting it, what they have to do and how they have to play the game. It's going to take a while to catch up, but hey, I mean, those numbers don't lie. It's still promising to me. But what I think this is too is the left and the Democrats, they have gone so woke and so far left that people now don't necessarily want to be associated with that. I mean, if you look at the extreme positions of the left, most Americans don't fit into those categories. They don't believe in cashless bail. They don't believe in open borders. They don't believe in having gay porn books in their school libraries. They don't believe in any of this stuff that the left has been puppeting for the last 4 years. And yes, some people might be, concerned about climate change, but not more concerned than they are about being able to afford groceries and making mortgage payments and the cost of their electricity. So it's become more mainstream at this point to be a Republican because it just seems more common sense. It doesn't seem like this radical notion anymore. It's actually more radical. If you say you're a Democrat, you might actually get more side eyes at this point than if you say you're a Republican, because that's how weird that side is gone. And then you've got Joe, and then you've got Kamala, and then you've got Tim Walz. I mean, you've got three jokers, each getting worse and worse as you go down the list. I don't know how many people can confidently say they want to vote for that and not feel silly saying it.
You mentioned side eye. So I'm going to see if I can share with you a photo. We'll see if it draws side eyes. We'll also see, because you live in Nashville, if perhaps you've got a better dictionary than I do to describe the following haircut. This is now the haircut being shared by my friend and co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Pete Hegseth. This, I would best describe for anyone listening on radio or podcast, would maybe be described as a ducktail. It is a mullet that is combined with a bit of a burst fade, so it's high and tight around the ears. It is long in the back, and it is being tucked into something horizontal. It's going very far off the back of the head here, Tommy. I don't know if you can see in your return in your studios in Nashville.
I can.
The haircut now being worn by Pete Hegseth. But I ask you, what is that?
So I don't pretend to know, what Pete favors, but after having talked to him about when he had actually the full-blown mini mullet that he had, I believe, a year ago, and then at one point he had a man bun, what I think it is with Pete Hegseth is that he really wants to have a full mullet, but he knows in his current job and position he can't have the full mullet. So this is him going just as far as he possibly can, still looking professional, still being able to sit on Fox and Friends Weekend and on Fox News, but really in his heart of hearts, he wants to have a full mullet. And this is just as far as he can go. So I think that in the case of Pete, that's what he's doing there. But this is also a trend. I mean, it's really popular in Nashville to have kind of a mini mullet. And that, to me, that's kind of a Southern thing right now. I think there have been worse trends, so I'm not necessarily against it.
I think your explanation for his rationale is 100%. He wants a mullet. His job won't let him have a mullet, so he's doing this blow dry out back and tuck in. Now, I've gotten some nominations, Tommy, on since we don't have a name for what this is, we at least have some comps. And here are some of those that have been sent to me or said to me by mutual friends of what he's going for. So first of all, there's the alien look from the Alien series, starting with Sigourney Weaver. The alien head does resemble what Pete's got going on in the back right there. So I'll let you nominate, Tommy, which one you think is most accurate. You've got Sonic the Hedgehog, which I think is pretty spot on. This is a good replication here of Pete's hair. It's just not blue yet. Then you've got the New England Patriots logo. This is the one I think he would prefer, and we have in fact suggested he goes with like a hair dye of blue into red in the back. He could just be the Patriots logo. And then finally is this nomination. He's just becoming aerodynamic. He is now basically a cyclist with a helmet that goes down the middle of the back, but horizontal, not vertically down the back, only when leaned over. His hair looks like a bike helmet, Tommy.
Yeah, I think it honestly does look more Donald Duck to me, as you mentioned, the way that it kind of folds in the back. But listen, men of a certain age are just blessed to have hair. I tell my husband this every day. You know what? Everything else be damned, at least you have hair. Like, that's a very real struggle for many men. So the fact that, you have hair and Pete has hair and my husband has hair, that in and of itself, I don't even care what you do with it because you're already winning if you have hair.
Can I just tell you what you just did is the difference between men and women. And it's something that my wife would do, okay? You took something that seemed maybe mean, definitely negative, and was definitely on purpose kicking him in the shin, and you turned it into a positive, and you were nice, and, oh, look, but you have hair. And the difference is, or between us, is that we're both, in our different ways, being nice. Men make fun of each other when they like each other. If I didn't like him, I'd never say a word. And you, because you're nice and you like him, pivoted it to something positive. That we talked about it last week on the Will Cain Show. In no scenario, no matter how much would you like a girl, right? Your friend, Tommy. And I know you got your crew that you run with. I've seen the pictures on Instagram. In no scenario would you turn to one of them and go, Sally, you look horrific tonight. What in the world are you doing with your hair?
I'm pretty honest, but no. Yeah, I would probably always, more err on the side of making someone feel good about themselves. But I think that there are so many worse trends, and I think women in general, like Pete, he's got an interesting look with his hair, right? It's definitely a choice. But there are so many men out there that have such weirder aesthetics. We could get into that all day. You know how I feel about the jerseys. I don't like the short pants where I can see the ankles. I don't like it when men wear flip-flops when they're not on the beach. I don't think flip-flops are appropriate attire unless you are at a pool or on a beach. So there are a lot of things that men do with their fashion and with their grooming that I would take issue with. But, Pete, he's got a look. But he loves the look. He's going for it. It's his new, Nashville, Tennessee look. And as somebody who's in Nashville, Tennessee, I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and so if I say, Pete, your hair is ridiculous, I think we just became best friends. That's how it works. So last thing here with Tomi Lahren. This is a big moment, but it's big, yet we still get them like half a dozen times. It feels like every other week. J.D. Vance on the Sunday shows, this time on ABC, talking to Martha Raddatz about not just illegal immigration and not just Aurora, Colorado, but as she frames it, Donald Trump's inaccurate and dangerous rhetoric. She brings up the reference to Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang, and illegal immigrants taking over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. Here's the exchange on ABC.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
That is, Tommy, a masterclass. Once again, she sputtered after that. She didn't have much to say. But do you hear yourself, Martha? A few apartment complexes in Colorado?
Yeah, to me, this also just goes to show how out of touch the mainstream media is. I mean, I don't claim to know what Martha Raddatz does in her downtime or how expensive her home is, but I would venture to guess in the number of years that she's been on ABC and been working her way through the career in journalism, I would venture to guess she has a pretty nice home, and I'd venture to guess it's pretty safe. So a handful of apartment complexes getting taken over in Aurora, Colorado, to her, that just seems like an anecdote. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, oh, so what? There's only a few apartment complexes complexes. But if you're somebody who lives in one of those apartment complexes and you've got a Venezuelan gang taking over your complex and walking around your hallways on Ring cameras with, obviously dangerous weapons, like, you're going to feel a little bit differently than Martha Raddatz. But I think J.D. Vance is fantastic for going at the media, and he does it in a really classy and graceful way, but he doesn't let them get away with any of this BS. And for so long, so many Republicans are kind of always on the defense, and they're always left, trying to pick their words carefully so they don't offend anyone. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they don't do that. And that goes back to the authenticity point we were making earlier. I think it's important that they fire back the same way he did in the debate when they tried to fact check him. He's not going to let them get away with this. And I think putting them on their heels, I want to see more of it. And I want to see more Republicans have the intestinal fortitude to do exactly what he just did, because he's speaking for a lot of Americans out there that aren't necessarily able to speak for themselves.
Yeah, I don't know how she justifies that statement. And I don't know if the world only makes sense in stats, but this is actually borne out in the stats as well. But to dismiss the experience of a few apartment complexes in a given town in America. And by the way, stats become anecdote like that. For what it's worth, where I live in Dallas, and I know you've lived here before. I mean, I do live in a nice area of Dallas, not far from where I live at all. There was a home invasion, a woman tied up, her home robbed while she was tied up. And guess who we find out the perpetrators are? At least one of them, a member of Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang. He was an illegal immigrant, came in through El Paso illegally, arrested twice already here in America, released both times. Tell me those anecdotes don't become stats and then doesn't become something that is absolutely important to Americans. You've got about half an hour right after the Will Cain Show. Head over to Outkick.com and you can hang out with Tomi as she kicks off the Monday version of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Thank you, Tomi.
Thanks so much, Will. I'll see you soon.
All right. Always great to have Tomi on the show. All right. It's Columbus Day. And I think it's worth understanding the debate. Is he a hero or is he a villain? Christopher Columbus. Plus, what is a Green Beret? With Congressman Mike Waltz. Coming up on the Will Cain Show. The differences between an Army Ranger, a Navy SEAL, and a Green Beret, and what it means and how it informs how you become not just a leader in the battlefield, but a leader for America. That coming up with Congressman Michael Waltz in just moments here on the Will Cain Show. Today is Columbus Day. It is also, in many states and cities across the country, Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, the Native American population and the explorer that paved the pathway to America, Christopher Columbus, have been pitted against one another, two sides of the same coin, one or the other. And it reveals, I think, so much historical ignorance that it really runs the risk of not only having a nation of people, but a civilization not know who they are and wander listlessly, maybe to complete the analogy, sail aimlessly onto the horizon. Who knows what we will become next if we don't understand how we came to be who we are. America, the West. In the pre-show meeting this morning, I saw the text chain. I didn't hop into it, but it's a bunch of guys on the show here, right? And I won't throw anybody under the bus, but one of the guys was like, I don't know why it matters. Like, it's Monday. We're all going to work. Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, I want to make the case for you for why it matters. It matters because of the significance of what was accomplished and the significance of what resulted. Western civilization coming to the Western Hemisphere. Christopher Columbus, of course, as we know now, by the way, almost as of today, new reporting shows he was actually a Sephardic Jew, probably from Spain, but for years been claimed by Italy. Still perhaps some discrepancy, although they've done DNA research at this point and try to figure out exactly who is he, Christopher Columbus. But Christopher Columbus sails west. It had been done before. The Vikings and Leif Erikson had sailed west. They probably discovered Greenland, perhaps even Newfoundland by this time. But he certainly was a not just courageous explorer, but perhaps a genius navigator and sailor. Columbus himself discovered in the 1490s things like the Gulf Stream, the wind patterns of the Atlantic, how to sail back and forth. He fought off mutinies multiple times among crew. He sailed into the unknown, although it had been discussed since like the 2nd century AD by I believe people like Ptolemy, that the world was round. By the way, he discovered it's not a perfect sphere, but is in fact not flat. He ended up landing in the Caribbean and discovered the new world. And by discovered, at the very least, paved the path, literally almost like he paved the road for Western civilization's colonization and expansion into the West. Now, of course, over time, there has been more historical research and a reframing of history to say, oh, Columbus, genocidal, monster, unleashed horrific future upon native tribes. Now, here's what did happen. Objective truth. Columbus landed in the Caribbean. He had a good relationship with some tribes, bad relationship with other tribes. All tribes basically suffered under the arrival of the West, of Europeans, primarily by disease. Hundreds of thousands of almost every nation, every indigenous people's nation suffered from this point forward. That is true, whether or not it was in North America, South America, Central America, or the Caribbean. Outside of disease, it's pointed out that Columbus took slaves. Columbus slaughtered many people he encountered. And that is true as well. Those are all things that are true. But the mistake made by the reframers of history, the Howard Zinns, honestly, the modern American elementary school textbook, is to think that Columbus lived in a time where Joe Biden was president. Columbus lived in 2020. Columbus lived in 1492. I don't even think that context is good enough. I think we need broader history. How about this broad history? Every single peoples that populated this planet from the beginning of time up until today have been a tribal existence based upon conquer and conquest. Period. End of story. Every single one. The Native Americans didn't live in some type of Garden of Eden utopia where everyone got along and shared resources. The Native Americans slaughtered one another. Conquer and conquest. Tribes. I know well about this. I've studied, North American, Native American tribes extensively, from the Comanches to the Sioux. It's just a fact. Like if we had a Comanche Day or a Comanche statue, what right would they have over, say, the Lepon Apache to say, you slaughtered our people? You destroyed our people. Complete genocide on our people. Take down that statue because the Lepon Apache were oppressed. Or the Tonkawa, or whoever. It's the story of man. And the place at which Columbus arrived was part of the story of man. He was a part of history. What he is guilty of is being a member of a more powerful tribe at the time. We saw the same thing happen out in South America with the Spanish conquistadors, or anywhere else on the globe that you go, the British, later. He won. His civilization, Western civilization, won. And it's as though we paint the losers of history, the victims of history, the losing side of history, as though they were the morally pure and that they were the ones living in the Garden of Eden. It's simply not true. Columbus was part of history. It's not something we have to celebrate, but we have to contextualize that this has been the nature of man. What more, he was a man of his moment. In the 1400s, you're beginning the age of exploration. Columbus is really the advent of the age of exploration. All these books I love reading about Shackleton and James Cook. It's 300 years later. Columbus starts this. And this is what happens, by the way, a new world, new resources. There's not some big bad evil to Western civilization and colonization other than doing what everyone else did, just doing it better. Columbus, yeah, he wasn't morally pure. But I think I need you to point out the morally pure of 1492. We can't hold them to the standards of 2024. And it totally sweeps away the incredible achievements of Christopher Columbus. Now, this holiday has become controversial. In 1937, FDR makes it a national holiday. It has since been pitted against Native Americans. And I understand that's real. Like if I drive through New Mexico, I've seen the graffiti on the overpasses. Columbus was a Hitler and so forth. But this is part of what's been taught in the Howard Zinn line of theology in modern American history. But it's been a holiday, and it's celebrated by Italian Americans. For what it's worth, by the way, it became a holiday, not a national holiday, but became a holiday in the 1890s after 11 Italian Americans were killed by a mob. Another sad moment in history that led to this holiday. And now, today, Tony Soprano won't hear you say anything about Columbus. You'll remember that story from The Sopranos, that scene from The Sopranos when Meadow learns all this in school and he says, "Not in my house. Columbus is a hero." but not for many, like the Vice President of the United States, who as early as 2019 was advocating doing away with Columbus Day and bringing in Indigenous Peoples Day. Watch.
Day. So I'm wondering, would you support efforts on a federal level to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, and why does that matter so much?
Sure. Yeah. And why it matters is, to your very point, we have to remember history. And this question, I think, really is connected to the last question about our morals and our compass and our goals and our aspirations. We have to remember our history. Uncomfortable, to your point about truths, though it may make us.
Every year for the past 4 years, Kamala Harris has declined to tweet out anything about Columbus Day. Instead, she's put out a message like she did last year. For generations, Indigenous people have protected their lands, languages, knowledge, and traditions. On Indigenous Peoples Day, we honor these many contributions and recommit to working alongside Indigenous people to ensure their communities thrive for generations to come. I think not only is it appropriate, I think it would be important to remember the Native Americans, their history, and their part in the story of America. But I don't think it needs to be pitted against one of the greatest achievements in Western civilization and, honestly, human civilization, the achievements of Christopher Columbus, bringing Western civilization, perhaps the greatest achievement in the history of man, to the West, bringing it to the Western Hemisphere. Over on YouTube, folks have chimed in on some of the discussion that we've had here today, including Robert Ball, who says, real men don't brag about what they do and don't do. Back to our discussion about Tim Walz. Corey Silent says, he doesn't even know how to hold a shotgun safely. As a vet, he should know muzzle discipline. What a hack. They are so phony. You load a shotgun, by the way, by pointing it at the ground or up, you could, but turning it upside down. He was trying to load it from underneath incorrectly. Naful says, they can define men, but not a woman. That's a great point. And then DP Rhythm says, as far as that man commercial, they fought against all the things they mentioned in that commercial for decades anyway. Some of the comments from you here on YouTube. All right. What is a Green Beret? What's the difference between a Green Beret and a Navy SEAL? Or, say, an Army Ranger? Congressman Michael Waltz is the author of a brand new book. It is called Hard Truths. Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. He's a Republican congressman from Florida's 6th District, and he joins us now on the Will Cain Show. What's up, Congressman?
Hey, good to see you, Will. Good to see you, man. And thanks for asking that question. I get asked all the time when I'm out and about talking to folks. And I think the easiest way, if everybody remembers the Osama bin Laden raid, right? That was SEAL Team 6 working with national intelligence assets, the other side of the world, hidden compound, dead at night. And they got in there, put 2 bullets on the forehead in a heavily defended compound and got out. They are the nation's elite raiding force. The Rangers more on land, and the SEALs can do it literally by sea, air, or land. Green Berets are different, and we have to think and lead differently. Our training is a lot longer. We have to learn local cultures. We specialize in portions of the world. We learn their languages. And we're the ones that will embed with a village, a tribe, a militia for a very long time, and only a few of us. One of my tours, there were me and 2 others, 3 of us, embedded with a task force of 90 Arabs from the UAE and Jordan, partnered with 180 Afghans out in the hinterlands. It's the closest I'll ever get to Lawrence of Arabia. If I never eat goat again, I'll be fine, because we were literally living off the land. But the point is, the SEALs and Rangers find, fix, and kill our enemies. We find and train our friends and allies and have them then take care of business for us. And our goal is eventually to work ourselves out of a job. And it's just a very different mindset. You're very alone. You're often very afraid. Your allies, half the time, these warlords would kill you and turn on you as much as they would the bad guys. So I talk about those attributes in here, and
right.
The discipline, the fortitude, the resilience, sometimes even the restraint that it takes, and that we learn downrange, and then how I'm applying it to this insanity in Congress and in this national conversation. And Will, there's days that I think the tribes of Afghanistan and Africa are easier than the tribes in the swamp in DC, but it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of the same mindset. And thanks for having me on to talk about it. The proceeds, by the way,
Absolutely.
are going to veterans charities for some of the men that I didn't bring home.
Well, the book is entitled Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. As you mentioned, you lay out many traits that you see somewhat unique to Green Berets and how they apply to modern American leadership beyond the military. And I want to get into that in just a minute. You know this. You and I've had conversations. I've also become friends with several other guys who served in special forces. And I have become, Navy SEALs get all the attention. They get all the movies made. And the more that I've learned, and, I share it with my audience, I'm not a military guy. I'm not from a military family. But the more that I've learned about Green Berets and actually what you guys do and who you are, the more I come to respect exactly what is unique about Green Berets, learning cultures, learning languages, thinking through problems, still with all the badass training of Rangers and SEALs.
Right.
But you tell a story early in the book. The reason so the point is I wanted to have this conversation, not just because you have a new book out, not just to apply it to American history, and not just because I'm personally curious about Green Berets, but you get that question, I'm sure, a lot. And even I, what is a Green Beret? What are the difference in all these guys? And you tell a story early in the book about I believe it's the Secretary of Defense asking that same question to some generals, right? And a wall. And you've got a Ranger, a SEAL, and a Green Beret. And the instruction is, hey, take down that wall. Would you share that story? Because I actually think it's the only illustration needed about the differences in these three types of soldiers.
Yeah, so the story, it's a little bit of urban legend, but it's about a new Secretary of Defense that comes in, and he's asking this question. And he brings a general in, and the general says, okay, let's go out to a part of the Pentagon that's under construction, under renovation, and they've got a new wall built there, sheetrock, and it's pretty sturdy. And he looks to the Ranger sergeant and says, take down that wall, Sergeant. The sergeant sizes it up, gets down in a three-point stance. He's a 240-pound linebacker-looking dude, and he crashes through that thing, blood dripping down his forehead, sheetrock all over him, puts a man-sized hole in it. And the Secretary of Defense, wow, I'll take a battalion of those. And you know what? We've got them. That's what the Rangers are. They're badasses. He looks at the SEAL, says, you take it on. The SEAL says, well, I don't know. He picks up a sledgehammer leaning against the wall, finds that one piece, and that critical piece, takes it down. The whole wall collapses. After beating on the thing for a few minutes, he's like, all right, Secretary's impressed. Secretary of Defense, the general turns to the Green Beret, says, Sergeant, you take it down. Sergeant walks over to the local construction guy who's got a forklift, talks to him for a minute, and the forklift driver takes down that wall and three more. And then the sergeant walks over to the forklift driver and says, case of beer on me, buddy. And it's that by, with, and through kind of mentality, whether it's a militia, whether it's a partnered military, or whether it's a tribe we're embedding in. We specialize in both insurgency, guerrilla warfare, and then we also specialize in counterinsurgency, partnering with friendly governments to stop, whether they're Islamist guerrillas or back in the day communist guerrillas. We could fight at both ends of the spear.
So we mentioned in the book, you focus on traits. Traits are an interesting thing, that's what we can improve upon. Sometimes it's what we're born with, but it makes up who we are. And you lay out these traits of a Green Beret. You talk about, as you mentioned a minute ago, restraint, discipline, adaptability, loyalty, resilience, determination, servant leadership, boldness, truth to power, persistence, and vigilance. Without walking through all these, Congressman, let's transition, if we could, now into how you've applied that, as you pointed out, to dealing with new tribes in Washington, D.C. And you know what? Something you said that was interesting a minute ago. You said, oftentimes when you're Green Beret in a hostile territory, the biggest threat to your life is actually the guy you've co-opted that you think that you're trying to convince to fight on your side. I guess to complete the analogy, it would be the Afghan quote unquote freedom fighter fighting against the Taliban that might be as big a threat to your life as the Taliban. Man,
Well,
that is DC.
No, it's all about understanding. It's all about understanding motivation, interests, commonality, right? And that definitely applies in politics. I mean, in politics, somebody will turn on you and stab you in the back when their interests are suddenly divergent from yours. And sometimes, a lot of times, politicians put their own interests over party or even over country. So it's about constantly understanding what we call the human terrain. Most militaries focus on mountains, rivers, the geographical terrain. We focus on the human terrain and understanding those tribal and other dynamics. But I want to point out, the restraint chapter. It's really one of my favorites, and one of those we were told to hold a position with our coalition allies. We came under mortar fire, and it turns out my sniper saw a little boy, 10-year-old little boy with binoculars and a cell phone that was helping the Taliban call in this artillery on us. My sniper asked for permission to take the kid out. He was shooting a Barrett 50 cal. It would have split that kid in half. And, this is going through your mind in a matter of seconds. I told him, no, take a warning shot. He fired a couple. The kid ran. It turned out the Taliban had forced his family to provide their oldest son from each family to go after the Americans. It turned out that was the right decision not to kill him. But what if I were telling that to one of my dead Green Berets, that I hadn't taken that shot? And it gets to the types of moral decisions you've got to make day in and day out in split seconds. But then I go back in history. I talk about a Russian Soviet submarine captain, forgotten in history, Vitaly Arkhipov, who was ordered to launch a nuclear-tipped torpedo into the U.S. Navy that was blockading Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He refused. He showed restraint. He saved the world, because when the submarine surfaced, they found out that would have been a really bad call. The guy went to jail for darn near the rest of his life, but he showed restraint. H.W. Bush showed restraint in the first Gulf War when he stopped in Kuwait, didn't go all the way back, didn't go all the way to Baghdad. Grant showed restraint on Lee and not ordering the decimation of the South, and prevented guerrilla warfare going on. So sometimes in politics, we are so conditioned to just hit back immediately. I was accused of stolen valor in my first campaign. I wanted to smear the guy and crush him. My team wisely, and my wife, told me to take a higher road. And so each chapter kind of grabs that lesson learned the hard way in combat and tries to apply it to what we're dealing with today. Everything from national service to sitting on I'll take you from the tribes of Africa and the valleys of Afghanistan to sitting on the plane with President Trump and talking to him about how we deal with these conflicts.
No, that's what wives, that's one of the valuable contributions of wives to the partnership of marriage, often capable of convincing us of restraint. Sometimes you don't restrain, and you shouldn't, but sometimes you should restrain. The thing is, and this will be my last thing, wisdom is an interesting thing, right? And it's almost as though Green Berets, you're trying to conquer that, right? Wisdom is something accumulated over a lifetime. Good judgment, wisdom being an accumulation of good judgment, I think. And that's what we look for in leadership, right? Because there's not a playbook, even to be principled, and you should be principled, but principles run into reality. And then you have to make game time decisions, like your point, making the call in the battlefield with the young kid who's the spotter. And that's leadership, constantly making those kinds of, maybe in some situations, no-win decisions, right? There is no good decision here, so I have to make the least bad decision. I could say to you how, and then you would say, you give me a long answer, but the short answer would be by the book, Hard Truths. How do you apply that in leadership? But maybe what I'll ask you instead is, you told me about the stolen valor experience. What is an example, now that you've been in Congress for a while, where you've seen yourself put in those situations, where you've had to make those same types of calls with a decision, it's not ideal, but that's the point. That's what leadership is, making the not ideal decision.
Well, it's I think it's been a couple of instances. I mean, one is, you have to build coalitions. If you're building, again, a coalition of murderous, oftentimes warlords, but you know what? Their interests are aligned with America's interests, and you have made that case successfully to them, then you get them all rowing in the right direction. That absolutely applies in politics, and I can give you instance after instance where you convince people that their interests are aligned. And I tell the case in the book of standing in front of a village of elders, and I'm trying to blend in, but I'm standing with an Arab officer and an Afghan officer, and it was the Arab officer saying, look at Jakarta. Look at these great Muslim cities like Dubai and Istanbul and others. They don't look like what the Taliban and Al Qaeda are telling you Islam has to look like. We can have a brighter future for our kids and still be good Muslims. We can move into the 21st century. And oh, by the way, look at what the United States did for Germany and Japan. After they defeated them, they helped them rebuild. That PSYOP, that strategic communication, turned whole villages just with the right messaging and narrative coming from a credible source, because non-Arab Muslims, like Afghans and others, revere kind of the word of the Arab as a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And when you have one saying, we don't have to live in the 2nd century, we can live in the 21st century, I would take that over a division of troops that we often default. You got to have a division of U.S. troops in an endless war on the ground. No, you got to have the right narrative, the right allies, the right approach. And I think if we as conservatives kind of take the right narratives with the right credibility, the good thing is the facts are on our side. Our policies work, and leftist progressive policies have never worked and won't work, but they message well. Because free is easy to say. So I think that kind of strategic communication approach that can turn whole swaths versus the application of force is one of the things I've really tried to apply in this modern, ideological warfare that we're in.
Well, it won't just satisfy my curiosity or yours listening at home about what it is like to be a Green Beret, but it's applicable to modern American leadership. And honestly, even beyond politics, just to, I think, what all of us deal with, no matter what your job is as a head of a family or in your career, you're constantly faced with this need to call on good judgment and wisdom. And I think you'll find that here by the new book by Congressman Mike Waltz. It's Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. Congressman, really appreciate you being on the Will Cain Show. I've already started the book. I'm well into it, and I'm really enjoying Hard Truths. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm honored, Will. Yeah, good to be with you, man.
Okay, we'll see you soon. There he goes, Congressman Michael Waltz of Florida, here on the Will Cain Show. Again, Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. All right, Hard Truths. The Cowboys stink. Coming up on the Will Cain Show. Can't find hope, only despair when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. But I've got more than hope. I've got excitement for the Texas Longhorns. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com. On the Fox News YouTube and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or join us every Monday through Thursday live at 12 o'clock Eastern Time on YouTube or on Facebook, the Fox News homepages. So, boys in New York, this is awkward, but it's just how I feel. So this is just the way it is. If you just take a survey of recent history, and by recent I'll include the 2024 NFL season, the Dallas Cowboys are 3-3, right? Hey, not that bad. I think you're one game out of the NFC East. Certainly not a hopeless situation. You've been 12-5 for 3 straight years, which puts you not just in good, but elite company. Like, I think that the NFL franchises that have been that good over that period of time, it's only the Chiefs. I think it's the Chiefs have been the only consistently good franchise over that same period of time as the Dallas Cowboys. But, of course, we know where it's played out. The same place has played out for the better part of 3 decades. And that is absolutely nothing in the playoffs. Really. I mean, like a sporadic first-round win in the playoffs. I said this to my son the other day, or maybe it was to my wife. I was like, you realize this. I think this is true now. there are only 2 NFL franchises that have not been to the NFC or AFC championship game since the Cowboys went to it last in 1990. It would be 95. So I think that's right. And I think the other one's the Redskins / Commanders. I think every other NFL franchise has been to the championship game. Not the Super Bowl, but the championship game. That's really bad, man. Like, really bad. And, I referenced it in the top of the show. So you remember in Batman, Christian Bale's put in that prison. Bane's raised in the prison is the story, right? Is it Bane? I think Bane's raised in the prison. And it's that prison with the hole in the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's stairs. And you could theoretically, although it's almost impossible, climb the stairs, jump, and get out of prison. It's like, why would you have a prison with an available escape route? Because and the line is, and by the way, the Christopher Nolan Batmans are really philosophical. They're really good. There's a lot in there. He says, because there can be no true despair without hope. Without hope, you resign yourself to your existence, right? So in order to instill true despair, there has to be the prospect of hope, even if it's not real or probable. And I think that's where I am with the Cowboys. Giving you that recent history, I'm having a hard time with it, but I'm kind of emotionally tapped out. Like, I'm me, I'm Mr. Record a video, although my brother says never do that again after Cowboys win or loss. I'm all in. I watch every game. I care. I have, maybe in my lifetime, never cared less. Like, that was bad yesterday, but I'm kind of numb. 47-9, the Detroit Lions obliterate the Cowboys in every aspect of the game. And they were making fun of the Cowboys. Like, they were throwing passes to offensive linemen. They were lateraling it to offensive linemen. They put offensive linemen out as wide receivers. They put Taylor Decker out. Now, he didn't, go out from his offensive line position. He was split out wide, and they threw it to him. They were laughing at the Cowboys. And you know what? I'm kind of numb. How do I make sense of that with who they've been in recent history?
I think coaching. McCarthy has to go, first of all. Jerry Jones, you know what the deal is with him. But I think it's coaching. If you're having those types of records and not making it to the Super Bowl, then it's coaching. It has to change. Are you more frustrated with coaching or Dak Prescott right now?
No, neither. I just feel like there's evidence. Okay, man? You've changed your quarterback several times. You've had 2 good ones. Now, Dak was awful yesterday. But I think by any estimation, Dak is a good quarterback, right? If somebody says he's a bum, they're just doing a thing. They're doing a thing at your party or they're doing a thing on TV. I'm not here telling you he's one of the best in the league. I'm not here telling you he's great or elite. But he's a good quarterback. And you know who's really good quarterback? Tony Romo. So you've done this, okay? You changed. If you had a problem-solving issue and you don't know what your problem is and you start changing out components to find out if that's the problem and the problem consists, it's not that component, right? Okay, I agree with you. Mike McCarthy's not the answer. I do. But so what? I'm going to change that component. What am I going to get? I'm going to get the same stuff I've been getting for 30 years.
Unless.
That's what I think. The problem is.
Unless.
Might not be the head coach. It might be the owner because you had Bill Parcells, one of the greatest head coaches of all time. McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. You've had solid quarterback play. Maybe Jerry Jones is the problem.
Process of elimination will arrive, and also, by the way, the moral principles of leadership will force you to arrive at some point at the top of the totem pole. Now, I will tell you, I do have a hard time diagnosing the problem of ownership because I actually think they run a pretty good front office. They draft really well. They're really good at infusing talent into that team. Everybody gets on them for not signing free agents, and you can definitely find mistakes like not signing Derrick Henry this offseason. But the truth is, I think their instinct of not to spend on free agency is the right instinct. So I don't know what they're doing wrong, but I'm just telling you, Again, I've got an engine block failure. I've changed the spark plugs. I have changed the carburetor. I eat carburetors, by the way. I have changed everything. At some point, the problem isn't all the things that I'm changing. So, yeah, man, like, will I get excited if it's like, you know who's going to be the head coach next year for the Cowboys? Bill Parcells. I mean, not Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick. Yeah, I will. Everybody was tweeting yesterday, hire Ben. That's right, James. And by the way, everybody was tweeting yesterday about getting Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, as the next Cowboys head coach. Okay. I mean, okay, another boy genius, fine, whatever. Okay. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. But and I'm the guy that's done the whole thing here. Find the right coach, find your Kyle Shanahan, find that guy. And I do believe that. But I think the Cowboys' problems are culture, and I want a culture changer. And the only guy that I could think would really, really do that is Belichick.
Well, I mean, their secondary was leaky. Offensive line was letting everyone through. So, I mean, those are specific problems that could be fixed right now, which could be a culture thing, but I don't know.
On the other hand, I'm passionate. I mean, I'm excited. I'm not numb. I'm in. And I said this to my family last night. I know this will most likely end in disappointment, but you can't be in sports for the avoidance of disappointment. You just get out of sports if you're going to try to avoid disappointment. But I get this in college football, man. It's not just that the Longhorns are good. It's like college football is good. Patrick, set aside your Seminole nonsense for just a moment. Like, for real, set it aside if you can, you emotional wreck. Is it just because I'm all in on the Longhorns that I'm watching everything and it's all great this year? Or is it really, really good this year? Like Oregon, Ohio State, amazing. Georgia, Alabama, amazing. And I don't know if it's the 12-team playoff. I don't know if it's the transfer portal because all these quarterbacks are moving around, giving everybody a better shot. But it's a quality. Saturdays are more quality than Sunday, I think. You disagree with that, tinfoil Pat?
I don't know. It doesn't feel.
You
that
just
much
can't
different.
do it. You can't get over it.
I'm dead inside. What? Don't go talking about being dead inside about the Cowboys when, it was way more egregious last year with FSU. It's like you can't come back from it.
All right, he's dead.
Know.
He's dead inside.
I'm dead inside.
He's roadkill. Let's set him to the side. Do you two in New York not think? And Dan, you're a Notre Dame fan, so I don't really know like how deep your passion is for the Irish.
I'm diehard Notre Dame fan. I'm excited, but all the games.
Why is he the best one to answer, James? Because you think he's
because he's got a team that's decent, but not like it's not like their year, but they're competitive, and there's the 12-teamer, and he's.
Oh, you're right. He's perfect because you may make it. The 12-team playoff is what's opened up the possibility for you. So yeah. So do you love this year, Dan, as a fan of the Irish?
I do. I mean, I love all the football too. I'm more into college football this year than I am NFL, and that's the opposite of what I was last year. So I agree with you.
Me too.
But it's been great football. I loved Saturday. I watched all day. My wife got very mad, but it's fine.
Saturday's great. And Dan, there for a while, English football had bled into. So like, I'll get on after Fox and Friends. I'll watch English football, and I watch it more than like Big Noon Kickoff or College Game Day. And then if the noon game in college football isn't great, sometimes I'll let those late soccer games go and not flip over. Not this year. This year I'm out. I'm over to college football. It's just, I don't know, man. It's really good.
I'm watching teams I never thought I would
Patrick's, watch. Exactly. Like, I care about SMU playing an ACC game. Yeah. It's interesting to me. Army is interesting to me. Yeah. Like, oh, my God, who's good, BYU or Iowa State or Kansas State in the Big 12? I don't know who's good, but it's kind of interesting to me. All of a sudden, all of this, I don't know if it's parody, but it's good. Saturday is – and I don't know, the quarterbacks are becoming more recognizable. Like, there's little mini stars like Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt or whatever it may be. You're getting these, like, stars. So when maybe that's because guys are around for their 6th and 7th year. They're transferring from one program to another, spreading their name around a little bit. I don't think it's NIL so much. But I do think, like, we had someone recently on the Will Cain Show saying parity is NIL and transfer portal have done the opposite of what we thought. It's not a few elites separate themselves. It's like we've got, I would argue, 20, 25 programs that are pretty competitive. That 2025 doesn't include Florida State Seminoles. If you're just going to be roadkill, I'm going to run over you over and over again.
Why do you have to?
Well, it's the perfect year for this, though, because of the playoff, to have this many good teams, because it makes it more interesting at the end of the year.
Exactly. All right, we're going to wind up sports talk with this. When the Rangers aren't in baseball, I don't do much baseball, but I know you Northeasterners are all in. So you're excited about the Yankees and the Mets, or just the Yankees?
Well, first of all, you got three of the biggest markets. So if there's any time to talk baseball, it's now. It'd be silly to gloss over it. But I think with the Yankee fans, we definitely have a similar path to the Cowboys, where it's been a while, and we're always in the playoffs. We're always winning a lot of games in the regular season.
I'm very nervous.
And it's one of those series that it's like, on paper, we should clear the Guardians, but we've just seen the history of the last 15 years, so there's just a nervous feeling.
I mean, we want a Subway Series, but TV wants Yankees-Dodgers. I mean,
Dodgers-Yankees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one would care if it's
You would
Mets,
prefer
Yankees.
a Subway Series?
Yeah. Just more exciting for us here.
I think so.
Especially the rest of Fox on our floor. Everyone's Mets fans. So
higher chance of getting to a
much
game
more fun.
somehow. No idea but how, but
yeah,
we're going to figure that out.
Yeah, for $5,000, sure.
We're going to find a way to get in there for free.
I think the ALCS, definitely if it involves the Yankees and to some extent the Dodgers, is when the casual fan starts to look over. Do you know what I mean? Oh, look at that going on over there. I'm not a fan of any of that, but I'll start looking over there.
You want Shohei and Judge just next to each other in a graphic.
Yeah, that would be good.
That's it.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be good. All right, that's going to do it for us today. I don't know who we've got coming up later this week. I don't want to put Tinfoil Pat on the spot because last time he failed that test, but I knew this. I got the answer. It's Matt Taibbi. You don't want to miss that episode tomorrow of The Will Cain Show. I'll see you next time.